I'm the president of Liftport Group. We've been doing these podcasts now, the DareGreatly Space podcast, since October. Thanks everybody for joining us. It's been super fun. We have had amazing guests, interesting conversations related to national policy, and we've done some deep dives into documents that get released. So that's kind of the makeup and plan of our show. We have a great guest tonight. I'll wait a moment to bring her on. And what we've been doing has really been focused at that intersection of policy, infrastructure, and money. And that's been a lot of fun. That infrastructure piece has been super important because ultimately we want to build things in space. We don't just want to talk about building things in space. Policy has been vitally important, even though I know it's sometimes dull. It's super important to talk about where does the direction from on high come from? Whether it's a space agency, whether it's at the federal level, not just in the United States, but all over the world. There's dozens, I think 60 or 65 space agencies around the world. There are 7 or 8 space forces around the world. Policy matters, and if you ignore it, you ignore it at your peril. And with that, I'm going to just jump in very quickly to some interesting news, and then we're going to get to our guest. First up, India just announced their space policy. Now, we are not going to go into it. We don't have time, but it's here. Let me do a quick screen share. It's here. It's really detailed. There's a lot to it, and it goes straight to the heart of why we do all the things that we do. So I'm going to post that to chat. So Indian space policy, not something you would normally dig into, but pretty darn important. I would argue that they are a major space power at this point, and it deserves the attention of your eyeballs for a few minutes. So that's one piece. The second piece is this, the US-India Defense Acceleration Ecosystem. I don't totally love that title, but also super important to be paying attention to this, right? So this is our world. This is where we are, and ignoring this means we're not really doing justice to the world that we live in. I wanted the whole world to go to space, so I'm excited when I see stuff like this. This one, whoops, I didn't hit the screen. Last week we talked about Deloitte, not to be outdone. Goldman Sachs comes out with a report, The Rise of Geopolitical Swing States. Super important, interesting read. It is saying some of the things we've been saying for a long time, but now you've got the Goldman's brand behind it. So maybe people will pay attention to it now. One of the last things I'm going to show is this. This is an advertisement. Whoops. How to build a power grid on the moon from IEEE. Super relevant to the work that we at Liftport are doing right now. We are working on something that is pretty interesting, and it's going to need a power grid on the moon. And then finally, and honestly, this is the worst document I've seen in a long time. Planet Labs, a company I really, really admire. Oops. Planet Labs has just come up with a document really focusing on deterrence by observation, how satellites have swung the direction of not just the war, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but also other things that are super important to monitor and pay attention to. So it's a multi-page document. Formatting is awful, but the content is terrific. So I recommend taking a look at that stuff. That's your reading list. That's your homework for the week. I'm not going to go into it. I recommend that you take the time to review it. And with that, I am going to move on to our guest. We're getting some pretty funny reactions from our team and from our community. But homework is homework, so go tackle it. It's worth it. All right. With that, we're going to switch gears and bring on our guest. I'm pretty excited to bring her on. She's a terrific human being. I think you'll find her pretty fascinating. And I'm not going to tell her story. I'm going to let her do her origin story. Give me a second. Bailey Burns, how are you?
I'm good. Can you guys hear me all right?
Loud and clear. 5 by 5.
Good. Okay, awesome. I'm doing great. I'm so thrilled. I feel like you and I should catch up. This is not the forum for us to be catching up, but it's so good to see you.
Yeah. We haven't talked in almost, pre-pandemic, I think. So it's been
pretty much.
Yeah. So Bailey, just as a quick refresher, what we've been doing is that we've been doing this podcast. During the pandemic, I'm going to tell this to everybody, not just to you. During the pandemic, Liftport came very close to going out of business. Our core task of building an elevator on the moon got sidelined like everybody else did when the pandemic hit. So we stopped doing the research that we were working on and wanted to just survive. And the way that we did that was we hosted 27 online conferences, virtual meetings. Hundreds of or thousands of people would attend different things. We did 27 of them for, I think, nine different clients. Mars Society, Moon Society, International Space University, the Chief Scientist of U.S. Space Force, Foundation for the Future, Mars Coin. I'm leaving somebody off, but I can't think who it is. So that's what we did. And then as the pandemic shifted again, we focused on building podcasts, basically the same technology, different distribution path. So that's what we're doing. And it's great to have you on our show. Let's start with your origin story. I know you a little bit from a couple of years ago, but one of the things we try to do is show that there are a lot of paths into this industry. Talent comes from a lot of different places. It comes from, everybody has different talents, different skills, different capabilities. You have an unusual one, which is pretty fun. We're going to talk about that later. But what is your origin story? How did you get here? And let's dive deep into it. We're going to spend about 10, 15 minutes looking at that.
Yeah, I don't know where to start because it feels like every piece from like kindergarten on somehow plays a role into how I got here. So it's like, how far back do you want to go?
All the way back.
Yeah. I think it's really important to say now I am an engineer and I really love my job and it's really great. But I think it's important. Let's go back to high school, let's say, where I thought I was actually going to be a journalist because I really liked history. I really liked writing, and I was really bad at math and science. That's like what I was getting. That was the gist of my high school, at least in the beginning, especially math. I've gotten C's in math from I think it was like trigonometry all the way up to differential equations. Actually, I got a B in differential equations, but I got C's the rest of the way. So it's really important to note that you don't necessarily have to be an A+ student to eventually get your engineering degree. So yeah, I decided, I was like, oh yeah, let's go travel the world, journalism. And as it came time, like senior year of high school, trying to really figure out what I wanted to do, just things were shifting. And I thought, well, you go to college to learn, and these are the things I'm good at, and I'm really bad at math and science. So I guess that's what I need to go learn more of, if you think about it that way. And so I went to an all engineering school, no journalist option available. So I was like, I guess we're doing the engineering thing. And because of that, I didn't have this like preconceived notion. You talk to a lot of engineers and they want to be a chemical engineer or a petroleum engineer, or I want to work on cars. They know what they want to do. And I went in just like, I don't know how I ended up here, but this is what we're doing. Obviously my grades weren't bad enough to where I couldn't get into this school. So it worked out well. And from there, I just kept following my passion, I guess. I call it like my stomach pull, when like you're really excited about something and it feels like you're about to go over the ledge of a roller coaster. And it just kept happening with space. That's where I kept being drawn to. So I'm like, I guess we'll go do the space thing. And then I went and worked in DoD for 2 years right out of college. I did a...
Hold on. Which school did you go to for, you say not an engineering school?
No, it was just high school thoughts and everything like that. And then for my undergrad, I went to Colorado School of Mines. So that's a full engineering. Yeah.
Okay. What I meant was, did you give up on the idea of journalism, or that's a
good question.
Switch,
yeah.
Right? Yeah, that's a big switch. Did you decide that you wanted to not do journalism? Was it an active decision, or did you say, okay, I'm going to school to learn something. The thing I don't know is math and science. I want to learn math and science.
I guess I really have not thought about that. So thank you for asking that question. That's an interesting question. I don't think I ever really gave up on journalism. And that kind of leads into other things that I'm interested in. I think as a career, maybe journalism is different than what I expected or something like that. But I have my own blog, and I really try to use my social media platform to tell a story, to kind of, it's not straight up journalism, but I've brought that love of researching, finding things out, and then sharing something with the world. I think that's come into how I present myself on social media and on my blog. So it's not gone, but it's just kind of shifted into something a little bit what I'm more passionate about, I guess. Yeah.
So more, rather than journalism where you dig into a story, learn it from the background, and then share it, you are kind of sharing your own experiences as a communicator of your own story. Okay, that's really cool.
That's a fair way to put it. Yeah.
Kind of plays a part, but it's like it's a sub part, not the main story.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. Yeah. But so engineering, here I am. And like I said, I worked DoD for a few years, realized DoD wasn't for me. And this is kind of where you come into the story a little bit. 2 years into my career, I was like, okay, I don't like my job right now. So I started applying to tons of jobs. I can't even tell you guys how many job recs I applied to. And I had 5 job offers. All of them were still DoD, but still like closer to space. So I was like, okay, we're getting into the right direction. And then I had one job interview, not an offer, an interview that came out of the blue. A recruiter had found it and matched me. And it was for this little company, Paragon Space Development Corporation. I knew nothing about them, but I knew that I had these other offers and they needed answers. And you and I were talking, and I was like, yeah, I think I might cancel the interview. You said, whoa, don't do that. Like, just give it a second. He's like, I know those guys. You should just go into the interview, see what you think, report back to me what you think of the company. And I did. And I mean, after like almost immediately, I called my mom and I said, hey, Mom, I think I have to move to Tucson. And she was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, that was the best interview I've ever had. And but off the phone with my mom, I had a job offer. And that's the job that I had for 2.5 years before coming to this one. It was, so Paragon does environmental control and life support systems, which is ECLIS. So that's oxygen, CO2 removal, that sort of stuff. That's the human spaceflight that I wanted. I had all these other DoD offers that I could have just kept kind of chugging along. But thank you so much for stopping me from canceling that interview, because it completely altered the trajectory of my career, just to go into the room and say, hey, I'm here to figure out what's going on and see if this is a fit. You just kind of sometimes have to be open to those opportunities. And now, yeah, I work at Blue Origin as a life support engineer, ECLIS engineer, and then also some other things, crew systems and EVA. Basically, it helped me find my passion that I love humans in space. It's putting humans in space, and how we're going to do that correctly is what my passion is. Yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. I love Paragon. I've been impressed by those folks. Arguably, I think they're the best environmental controls life support system company in the world. I mean, I really do. That's what I told you 3 years ago. Yeah, I remember that conversation pretty vividly, because you were coming in from, was it Raytheon?
Yep.
Yeah, you were coming in from Raytheon, and you're like, well, I've got this. And you were still partway through. I don't know whether you were a senior or your first year of your master's. I don't remember where.
First year of my master's. Yeah, you've got a great memory. Yeah.
Yeah. So here you were, what I call fifth year student, trying to figure out where you fit. Everything you were doing at School of Mines was focused on people and lunar development, and you were so frustrated with Raytheon. I mean, not to throw the folks under the bus. They're really solid engineers, but it wasn't what you were aiming to do. It wasn't who you wanted.
Yeah, I'm a moon girl. That's DoD. It just wasn't mixing, Yeah.
So it was. I mean, you had asked me for like just a personal one-on-one conversation. I think we did it just here, not the same office. We're in the
but it was, yeah.
But, it was just one of those things where a little soul searching. You were kind of in that soul searching. What do I want to do when I grow up? Your career.
Still there, but yes, yeah, you're right.
So let's talk about Paragon for a minute. I mean, I know that they've got some projects you cannot talk about. Same
of course, yeah.
Origin, so I don't want to do that. But in broad strokes, how do you go from? And I just looked this up on your LinkedIn profile. How do you go from? Honeybee to Raytheon to Paragon? Is there a through line there, or it looks to me on the outside, it looks like Raytheon was the outlier, but Honeybee goes directly to
Blue.
Paragon and to Blue.
Yeah. So I interned at Honeybee Robotics for 2 summers, and that was before they were bought by Blue. This was before I even saw the connection between them. And it was a really great experience. I got that opportunity because I was talking to a friend of mine who was pretty high up at Lockheed. And I was like, can I get an internship? And he said, you don't want to intern here. Once again, nothing against Lockheed, but he said, you want to go get your hands dirty? Let me send you to this little company up in in Longmont, and go see what you can do up there. And that's what I did. I loved it. And at the end of the day, it was just one of those that was like, okay, I did that. Let's go see what else is out there. And then when it came time to find a job, it's really hard to find a job. And Raytheon was the first one that sent me an offer letter. And I was like, I'm scared. Let's jump in. Let's do this. Because I mean, you get frazzled. And actually, if there's any soon to be grads or recent grads, it's really easy to just accept the first job that's on your plate. And it's not bad. Obviously, that's how I got to where I am. That's where I learned about systems engineering. I'm a systems engineer, so I had no idea that was an option before Raytheon. So I'm really grateful that they were able to show me that and a lot of other opportunities. But sometimes it's to take a step back and say, hey, maybe you've had this space thing going. Maybe this doesn't quite align with that. And maybe you either jump in knowing you're going to learn something that you'll apply to it later on, or you say, thank you so much, but let's see what else is out there, and really focus in on what your goals are. And make sure that lines up. Because sometimes it's I just jumped in. It was easy. I was scared. That's what happened. And it ended up working out for me. But sometimes it's really easy to get stuck in those jobs for 20 years. And then you look down and you say, oh, oh crap, how did this happen? Yeah.
Nice, nice. All right, so let's talk about Paragon for a minute.
Mhm.
What did you learn there? What didn't you learn that you were missing? What successes did you have, and what stumbles did you have?
Oh yeah, let's talk about it all. And before I jump in, like, Paragon was, I have to owe it to them for picking up this little DoD girl who had no idea about life support and giving her a chance in the big leagues. That was kind of, they were the starters for me. And I can't say enough good things about Paragon. I learned about life support. I learned about human spaceflight through this. I got spacesuit work and all this other things that a lot of people would just be like, that's a real thing that an average person can do. That's crazy. And that's something I was able to do at Paragon. I learned about small companies. I love Honeybee. I love Paragon. I love the small companies because you get to just, it's a family. Like it sounds kind of corny, but it truly is a family. And you get to really know everyone. And just, I don't know, it's a different feel. I had a whole bunch of different hats on. So in terms of like learning, I had to do all sorts of different jobs and figuring things out, which I loved. Let's see what I didn't learn. Let's see. I think one of the reasons that I decided to go on to Blue Origin is because I was really excited to get out of the R&D phase and really build something. And that was just kind of where, when you're a smaller company, that's what you do is research and development. And then that was kind of one of those transition points of like, okay, I've done a lot of learning. Let's go put it to the test now. It had nothing to do with Paragon. It was what's the next phase. And then, yeah, successes was just everything. There was so much win from that company of learning in a safe place where it's okay to fail and then get back up and keep going. I really learned kind of about that integrity and that indomitable spirit. I think one of the biggest stumbles was probably like the first time that I was put in a management position. I'm still pretty young in my career. So I was put in this management position and it was a huge lesson on what is it to lead someone. Like I know how to lead myself. I get up in the morning, I brush my teeth, and then I go to work. But when you have to like lead a team and have that direction, it was definitely, I would say, my time that was a stumble that's led to now I know what I want to be as a leader in the future. So I hope that answered all of your questions all at once. But
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I think the world really focuses on big wins, successes, knock it out of the park. Like I think our whole society focuses on that. In my own opinion, I think you learn lessons by when you have, skinned your knee, when you've fallen and you have to figure out what the next step is, how to get up and how to take that next step. So I
yeah,
do think there's things that maybe we spend too much time focusing on the successes and maybe
I
not
agree.
enough time focusing on the things. So in your case, do you mind if I ask how old you are and how old you
That's
were
yeah.
in your
I'm
role?
super fine with all of that like transparency. I'm 27 now. I joined Paragon when I was 24, I think, right around then. So, yeah, I guess, and then, grad school was 23 to 25. That's kind of the age range, I guess, that we're working in. Yeah.
So you were 24, 25, 26, running a small team. Paragon's not a big company, so it's not like you had a cast
Mm-mm,
of thousands to deal with. But
no.
but what were the challenges? What was your broad strokes? What was your project?
I had four projects while I was there. I worked on the Dianetics proposal for the first round of HLS way back when SpaceX won. That's what brought me to Paragon. I worked on Gateway, and then I worked on some stuff that I can't talk about. Think more space tourism, which was a really interesting idea because we'd been focusing with like NASA requirements and we knew what they wanted. When it comes to space tourism, they just know that they want to do cool things, and so you have to be the one that like, okay, so you want this. This is what you want, and it was a really interesting. That's one of the reasons that I also went to Blue is because Blue is focused on space tourism, and I have a new passion for making that safe and accessible. So
Cool. All right. So how big was your team? Successes and failures with the team.
let's see. I think I'll have to think. Like successes was just so great at communicating and supporting each other, especially on the tail end. I worked in like a tiger team. It was kind of like a fun offshoot team. And so I can't even tell you how we just bonded. We had skiing days, and when we had to get together, we would go out to dinner, and it would be a big. So that was truly like I felt comfortable. I felt safe with these people, and that's something that I wasn't expecting to experience in my career, let alone that early. To really just feel like a valued member was absolutely incredible. I have to think like Lowe's from like just team dynamics. It's kind of the same thing when you have these miscommunications, or when you have my big thing right now is crew dynamics and kind of mindfulness. I guess that's been a big part of my career trajectory. When you have these teams that are all so passionate and so focused, sometimes you can get things like ego comes up, or you start feeling like this person thinks this, and when you don't have this like super wide open communication, those things will fester and become bigger than the project itself even. And so it's really about like nipping those things in the bud, communicating with respect and authenticity. And I think that's one thing that I really pulled from Paragon that I'm so excited to bring into the rest of my career.
Awesome. And we're going to wrap up on Paragon here in a second and jump and spend most of the time on Blue and what's next. But so the total team size at Paragon, everybody included, it's not even 30 people, right?
So let's see here. The max that I saw the company reach was about 230 people in everything.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
okay.
it definitely went big. I think when I joined, I was like number 62. So I watched it go through
Okay,
this
all right.
massive growth.
That's the Paragon I'm thinking of. Okay.
Yeah. So they've kind of been like figuring themselves out of like how to like manage as they grow and everything like that.
Right.
Teams that I worked on, like HLS was bigger. We probably had like half the company working on that. Like I said, I worked on a tiger team, which at one point there was 5 of us, and that was just like we just got down and rolled up our sleeves and figured out what was going on. So you kind of see this range. But even the teams that I directly worked with were more than 10 people max. It's not the big companies that you see where you have to know everyone in every division. Everyone's right here in front of you.
Well, and that was happening during COVID, right? So
that was interesting.
That adds a layer of complexity on top of everything. Okay, so fast forward to where you are now. You're still doing environmental controls. You're working on, I'm guessing, orbital reef. Yeah.
I can say what I'm working on. I'm actually working on the SLD win, the lunar lander win. So I can say that I'm working on that. Yeah, which is exciting. Like I said, I'm a moon girl, so like anything to the moon, I'm very excited about.
Excellent. What's your role there? I mean, you go from a company where you're employee number 62 to now you're employee 6,202, right?
Yeah, higher than that, but something like that.
Yeah. Okay. So how many people are at Blue, and what's your employee number in terms of size?
That's actually a good question. Yeah, I don't know exactly when. I think I got hired on around the 7,000, 8,000 mark. I think they might have to be like 9,000, 10,000 now, somewhere in there. But again, it's very interesting to watch a company grow quickly. That's a very fun thing to be a part of because you can feel the excitement. And so I'm kind of doing the same thing as I did with Paragon, just on a larger scale.
Right. Where are you? Actually, I don't even know.
In the world? Yeah, I left Colorado to move to Tucson for Paragon, and that was one of the other drivers for me is I had to get back to Colorado. So I'm back in Colorado, got the mountains over there, got the sunsets, got my family. So it's really good to be back. And it's, Colorado is called Aerospace Alley. It's considered the Silicon Valley for the aerospace industry, kind of, because there's so much from Colorado Springs up to Boulder. There's so much happening, startups, big companies. It's an electric place to be if you're in the space industry.
Yeah, I honestly, I'm seriously considering picking up and moving headquarters that direction. So
I wouldn't oppose. We could go grab a drink after work.
All right. Okay. So what do you want to talk about for Blue? Now, again, I know that you've got, I Liftport has signed, I think it's a 17-page NDA with Blue. So I know what that looks like from the outside. Your NDA is probably 71 pages. So I know you can't talk about it. Blue historically in the industry, in the Seattle region, when they first started, we call them the black hole company because they would just pull information in and then let nothing out, nothing. and so they've been operating like that. I got on Blue's radar in 2006 or 7.
Okay, you've been around for a lot of it, yeah.
Yeah. We didn't sign our NDA until probably, well, the one that matters is 2019, I guess.
So it took a while.
Yeah, it took a while, right? Like they brought me in to do a debrief, so that was cool. That was a long time ago. But again, they don't let anything out. So I don't hold anything against you if you was like, well, can't talk about that. Next topic. But let's talk about what you can talk about here. So what area are you working on? Be as specific as you can. How big is the team? If you want to, this is a topic about money and infrastructure and policy. So you can kind of take this in a direction.
Yeah, I think so. Like I said, what I can say, it's in my email signature. So if you email me, you can find out this information. I am on the lunar team, so Lunar Transportation Business Unit, and I am working on the lunar lander. I do life support systems, which we talked about already. I also do crew systems, which is like the beds, the toilets, the food, the medical supplies, like all the things that you like. Oh yeah, I guess humans do that. They do need that, and from what I think about, like Eclipse is about keeping humans alive and crew systems is about keeping humans happy. So that's like the best way to kind of put it into what's going on.
That's actually really interesting. I work with humans all day long, but I don't work with humans in that environment. So environmental controls is to keep humans alive. Crew systems is to keep them happy. Is that what you just said?
Yeah. Happy and comfortable. Yep.
It's pretty succinct. I like that actually. I like that a lot.
I would say that like the Mercury and Apollo capsule, they probably didn't have the strongest crew systems because it was not super comfortable for those astronauts. Yeah. And then let's see, I'm also working on, go ahead.
No, go ahead. What are you working on?
Okay, the other two things that I focus on, lunar dust mitigation. We mentioned my master's degree. It's in space resources or in situ resource utilization, ISRU. When I was doing that, I got really interested in the moon girl, and lunar regolith for building material, water on the moon, those different areas. And so when I came to Blue, I was like, yeah, I've done something with dust, with plume ejecta. And they were like, great. Keep doing that. And people don't realize that lunar dust is probably one of the biggest issues that we have on the moon. Radiation is up there and everything like that. But lunar dust is actually basically like breathing in asbestos. That's the best way to put it. And on top of that, it's electrically charged. So that means it's sticky asbestos. And so it's just absolutely horrible for humans, for mechanisms. So we're trying to figure out that, just like the rest of the industry. I jumped into it and I was like, okay, what does the industry got for lunar dust? And I look at it, I'm like, okay, basically nothing. Like no one knows how to deal with this. So it's a big issue. Really proud that I'm on Blue's team to help figure that issue out. I also do EVA. So working with the suits of when they go out onto the surface in the big white suits and everything like that. We don't own the suits, but we're doing the interfaces, everything like that. So like I told you earlier, it's basically if there's a human involved, I'm probably somehow in the picture, making sure they're comfortable, happy, all the things we just discussed.
Awesome. I'm going to put in a plug. We've got a guest coming in about 2 weeks or so, early July, mid-July, something like that. It's Melissa Roth. She is co-founder, partner at Off Planet Research, and their whole gig is dust. It's dust. It's how do you make a stimulant for the moon? How do you deal with dust mitigation? it's a pretty big deal. It's really overlooked. Like, we've been talking about this for a long time, but we don't have good solutions. We don't. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. If you were local, I'd suggest a beer with Melissa. But we'll connect.
I'll get on her radar. But yeah.
Cool.
For sure. I mean, it's just one of those that, like, there's no single path. Like, there's no one answer to solving dust. It's just like, you might have to do this, you might have to do that all together. Like, it's a very, if you're one of those like detective engineers and you want to go figure out a problem, that's the problem to go focus on, because it is just mind blowing how deep it goes. Yeah.
You know us, we're trying to build an elevator on the moon. So if you can imagine a string,
which I
stuck
love,
into the I'm super worried about your big rockets coming in and blowing literal tons around
dust.
The moon.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just you. It's Blue. It's SpaceX. There's a couple others that are aiming.
Anyone going to the moon. Mm-hmm.
Right. Like, this is an unsolved problem that's going to affect everybody else. So if you go on a Thursday, the other people that show up on Saturday are still dealing with your problem, and the people who show up a month later are still dealing with your problem. So so it's a cumulative, additive problem that I think we're taking for granted, and I think it's going to be terrible. So I'm glad you're working on that.
Very dusty.
It's not an easy solution. There's not a solution to it yet. Okay. So if it touches a person one way or another, you've got some role in it. So let's just kind of take them a little bit at a time. Let's talk suits. Let's talk suits, because I think they're pretty neat. What do you do with suits? They're not your suits. You're talking about the interfaces, the connectors. I'm guessing that's coolant and gases, filters. This widget connects to that widget, and you have to figure out how to make that connection airtight, sealed, stuff like that.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, since we have the NASA contract, that means if you've been paying attention, that Axiom is making the next generation of NASA suits. So we will be interfacing with the Axiom suit, but obviously they don't have a suit yet. We don't have a lander yet. We're still learning what that's going to look like. And so it's a lot of that kind of discussion, making sure that we're all on the same page through NASA, of course, because NASA is our contractor, which, as a systems engineer, this is what I love. It's kind of the figuring it out from I'm not gonna say like an engineering standpoint, like a people engineering, like how do you get the teams to work together? How do you get the communication to be there? So I think it's been super fun. And if you're just talking suits in general, like I said, I've got a little bit of a background in suits. I could talk about suits all day. I think they're amazing. I can talk about the issues that we're seeing with suits, IVA versus EVA. I'm really excited to see. You want me to talk about IVA, EVA kind of stuff? Or?
Robots are cool. Rovers are awesome. But at the end of the day, if we're not sending a person, I don't care. Right? Like, I know what the necessary first steps are, but if it doesn't lead to settlement and babies on the moon, I'm not interested. So
I love that. Babies on the moon. Let's go.
Right. Yep. So, eventually, I'm a little bit famous for this quote. If we don't have babies, we're just camping. Right. So, right. I know some of the folks from the Mars Society are going up to the Arctic station here in just a few weeks. That's cool. Great. They spend a couple weeks in the Arctic. That's really good. They're doing good science there, but they're just camping. Right? They're not going there to settle the Arctic. And if we go to the moon, if we go to Mars, unless we can have children, we're just camping. So I think settlement means kids. Some way, somehow, along the way. Maybe it's not going to happen right away. I got that. I understand all that. But unless we, and by the way, Terry Trevino is one of the guys. He's in the chat right now. So.
Oh, I know Terry. Yeah, he's going up. Yeah, he's going up with that mission. Yeah.
Terry's one of the guys who's going camping. So hats off to Terry. Thanks, Terry, for being supportive here. But seriously, if we're not going to the moon, if we're not going to Mars in a way that leads to children, the only thing we're doing is camping. We're not settling that body. So
interesting. Yeah.
Let's talk about these earliest first steps. Let's talk about the suits. Let's move past robots. And you say, I don't know if you can see the chat. He says, "Love you both," so that's fun. I like this show, by the way. We met Terry through this show a couple years ago.
That doesn't surprise me. Terry's involved with everything. He's.
So let's talk about suits. That's what you did a little bit in Paragon. That's what you're doing here. So what do we not know about suits? What do we take for granted about suits? It's been 50 years.
Let's see.
It's been 50 years since we've had a lunar capable suit. So I'm guessing we've done some upgrades, but I really couldn't tell you what the upgrades are.
Yeah, so from one thing, I mentioned EVA and IVA. So if you're not familiar with the suit world, IVA is intervehicular activity and EVA is extravehicular activity, so inside and outside. IVA suits are going to be, we call them the pumpkin suits that NASA astronauts wear. They're the big orange ones, and you wear them in case of like any sort of like depressurization or any like bad event during launch, landing, or anything when you're inside the vehicle, but something goes wrong. And they were really kind of instated after the Challenger, kind of when it was like, okay, if something goes wrong, we want to have these suits and everything like that. EVA suits are the big white ones that you see. The interesting thing about, and I guess I can get into that a little bit, they're bigger, they're bulkier, they're harder to move in, and they are more geared towards, you don't have the spacecraft around you. So there's a larger thermal layer, there's a larger radiation protection, and then also your life support system is connected to you. For IVA suits, you can be in the capsule or whatever and have you hooked up to the oxygen that's over there, and that's great. EVA is when you're out, and technically you could have an umbilical and still be connected to all that, but umbilicals get in the way. So a lot of the times they have the giant backpacks that you see, and that's really important for exploring the moon, because on ISS you're close by and you can kind of be tethered if you want. But when you're exploring the moon, you want to be able to walk and see what you can find, go on the rovers. So you have to have your PLIS, your portable life support system. And that has all of the ECLIS in a condensed little package that can last for 8 hours or whatever the EVA needs it to be. So that's kind of the difference between the two. Apollo astronauts actually had this weird hybrid of both of those suits in one. So they wore those suits inside the capsule, everything getting ready, and having that during launch. And then they were also used on the surface of the moon. From my understanding, it was kind of this like weird hybrid of both. And now we're in this weird phase where we have those two separated. And one of the biggest issues that's going to be, or not issues, a good reason for that on the moon is because, like you said, there's been a lot of upgrades, but for the ISS suits, they didn't really have to worry about walking. When you're in zero gravity, your legs are just the lower half of your body, and you don't need them to walk. In fact, they talk about how you mostly walk with your hands. You're kind of like a little monkey or something. You're pulling yourself around. So exactly, yeah. So that's a big upgrade that needs to happen. One of the reasons that the Axiom suit needed to happen as well was because the legs were not as developed for the EVA suits in zero gravity for what we're going to need on the moon, where we're going to need them to be able to move their legs and to be comfortable and them to bend down and pick things up. So there's a lot of bearings that went into like thinking like your hip joints, kind of like that area. That's where a lot of bearings went into that to figure out how to do that. better bearings came into the shoulders, so you can kind of do all of this better. Maybe not this. This is a little too much, but like, you can kind of go up and around, and you have a wider range of access. So a lot of it was kind of a human factors. How do we make these suits more can fit to the human body? And we've just seen that progression. I think the ISS EVA suits and the shuttle EVA suits are even better. And then we're going to see this next generation of lunar suits be even better than that. And suits just become not as cumbersome as they have in the past.
What about mobility and hands?
Yeah.
I know that a couple of the astronauts have bled in their suits by just gripping something, opening and closing for hours at a time. There's gosh, I can't think of his name all of a sudden, blanked. There's a professor out at MIT and ISU that has worked on the Hubble, and he's talked about how he bled in his spacesuit trying to fix the Hubble, and the mission was so important. He was like, "Well, I'm not going inside yet because we're not done." And
I need to do
so,
this.
what about when we talk about mobility for the hips and the arms? Terrific, but at the end of the day, we're smart monkeys. We want to use tools. So, how do we do with our hands?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not a glove expert, so you'll have to bring one and I'll come watch that episode so I can learn more. But for the most part, what I can say, pressurized, I've been in a pressurized suit, and your fingers become sausages. I had to like have a little switch that you just like click on and off. And I was like, did I get it? I don't even know if I'm touching it. Like it's a completely different experience. It's really hard to explain. I know for like astronauts, I was just in a suit, but I know astronauts they're fitted for their suits. You take body measurements from every direction to every direction. And I know they take finger measurements. They take like, this is how long this is. And I think actually they might have their gloves custom made, or at least as close to custom made as possible. And they're adjustable to be like, oh, this part only needs to be this big. So I know they are working on making gloves better for each human, and like design. I've got little hands. For those of you that don't know, I'm very small. So I got the little hands. I would be interested in custom design smaller gloves. And then, like I said, I know a lot of research is going into this. I can't answer what specifically is happening. I've heard rumblings of 3D printed suits, which will include more exact measurements for fingers and gloves as well. But this is just what I've heard around the block. So.
Is that an Axiom advancement? Because I think that would be really hard to do unless you have a lot of money behind you.
So what I've heard most rumblings is actually UND, University of North Dakota. I understand that they're a known good place to go for suits. From what I understand, they're starting to figure out how can we actually, if they're doing pieces. They're like, oh, let's do the shoulder, let's figure it out. But over how research goes over the course of years, that could eventually result in a full suit.
That's cool. Both you and Terry will laugh at me, but I never think of University of North Dakota as a space school, even though I know that it is. It's just never top of mind, so that's not very fair.
Because it's in North Dakota. It's way up there. No one goes up to North Dakota.
unless you're a military officer in the missile command. That's true, yeah. There and then has spare time, so you develop, as academic faculty, you develop a really, really good rocketry program. And then along the way, now that you've got a good rocketry program and ballistics program, you start expanding. I know Terry went to an analog site there, and he just put in suit lab exclamation points. So, they'd probably have to just take a road trip out there and just go
just to see what's up, right?
Yeah. That's fine. Why don't you talk a little bit about what you got out of Colorado School of Mines, because it's a relatively new program, their space resources program.
Yeah, I think it started 2017, 2018. So I was one of the earlier graduates. I graduated in 2021. It's been a really, it's once again, I guess, if this is just to define how my career has been going, it's I get in on something when it's growing and I
Yeah.
watch it grow. Like I feel like that happened with Honeybee, Paragon, Blue Origin, and UND. Although Blue Origin's been growing for long before I got there, but or not UND. I didn't even go there. School of Mines, but it's been cool to watch that program kind of expand because it started off as this idea of, hey, right this second, but 20, 30 years from now, we need to figure out how to have a sustainable presence in space. And that's what drew me to it. I'm all about sustainability. I'm about sustainability, safety, and the human experience, if that has not been clear by now. So how are we going to do this space thing where we're not extracting all these resources from Earth just to go do these things? What's the reasoning behind it? And so then that's when I started getting interested in water on the moon. And, asteroids have water as well as cool materials, metals that we can use for different things. And I started seeing the full picture of, if we're going to do space, how are we going to do this the right way? How are we going to make sure we're cleaning up after ourselves, using the least amount of materials possible, trying to do this the right way? And I know space has this reputation of being like the billionaire club, or why are we going to space when we're leaving our problems here on Earth? That's not really the point. And I think this is a great avenue to show that not only are we going to make sustainable for space, but then we're going to actually be able to bring that back to Earth. And that's what drew me to the program. Since then, the program taught me from like a business or more like logistical sense how we're going to do that. And so now my brain thinks in that way, which I'm very appreciative of. And it also teaches you in areas like space law, space economics. There's a lot of other classes that teach you like, okay, yes, this is the cool robotics thing, but this is how it ties into the larger picture. And I think that like whole well-roundedness is what really that program is really good at.
Nice. Yeah, I've admired. I don't know a lot of people up there. I know a few graduates. The professors I know by reputation, but I don't know
Yeah.
most of them directly. Uh, Shout out to my team, Leah. She's not online right now, so she's going to be surprised when she hears this. But she just got accepted to her master's program at Embry-Riddle, so I'm super proud of her for that.
Ooh, that's another great school to check out. That is amazing.
Yeah. She's gonna have Andy Aldrin as one of her professors. So yeah, it's
Dang,
cool
yeah.
stuff. There are really some great programs in the world right now for space education. I think my school is International Space University, but I like the idea of a specialist school. I'm never going to go to MIT for orbital mechanics. Like that is not my thing.
No, me neither.
George Washington University for space policy, that might be my thing. McGill might be my thing. But I don't want to be a space lawyer. It's amazing how many specialty programs have come online. Dr. Greg Autry runs the Thunderbird program down in Arizona. School of Mines. Let's see. Michelle Hanlon runs the program down at Ole Miss. She's focused on lunar policy and law. Yeah, there's some really remarkable specialist schools, and I think Colorado School of Mines really is the only one that's focused on in situ resource utilization. Is that I think I'm right about that. Is that correct?
I would say that there are other schools that are doing work in that area. I know CU Boulder, for example, has work in ISRU. I know, a handful of other schools. There's some schools in California. I do know of schools that are interested in ISRU, but School of Mines is the one that was like, hold the phone. Like, we're going all in. We have an entire program dedicated to this one thing, not like, interested in this, you can go do research in this area and support. This is like, entire program is everyone is thinking ISRU. And I think honestly, it's changed the way that I see young people coming out of that program, because there's a number of them at Blue Origin and stuff. Those people tend to think about the space industry and the opportunities in the space industry in different light. They actually think of like the resources available to you are not just what mass constraints you have coming up from Earth. And that is true for right now. But when you're thinking in the future, I mean, you're playing a game of physics, and they have new tools in that game, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, I love the way you said that. That's totally right. There's some really great robotics programs in the country and around the world.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, but Colorado School of Mines has been doing robotics in mining for a long time, so it was
Yeah.
a really easy jump to add, one more
Space
thing.
mining.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, yeah. So that's been really cool. All right, we only have about 5 minutes left, so I want to, if there's anything else you want to talk about, if there's something you want to show off, I'm happy to have you do that.
Are we talking about the same thing here? Or?
Yeah. Well, it was gonna be a segue from the gloves, right?
Oh, duh.
And then we went a different direction. So let's come back to the
Yeah.
segue about gloves and talk about manual dexterity. You said that you're not a gloves person. That's a different kind of person that works on stuff. Um, have you tried to do a Rubik's cube in gloves before?
I have tried ILC Dover, which is the creators
Yeah,
of the Apollo suits and the shuttle suits. Um, they had one glove. Like they didn't have both left and right. They had one glove. So I solved it with one glove. And what I started doing was because I just started manipulating with this hand more because this was so hard to do. And I think what I learned, I think, first of all, I think all astronauts should have to learn how to solve a Rubik's Cube for a number of reasons, like
right.
3D spatial awareness, cognitive reasoning, all these different things. But also, I was talking to astronaut Nicole Stott, and she was telling me to go gardening, and she would use her hands to pull up to build her finger muscles for the. And I was like, well, have you considered Rubik's Cube maybe? Because you got to have fast fingers, you got to have strong fingers. So I think it would be a huge advantage for astronauts to learn how to solve a Rubik's Cube, both in and outside of a suit with the gloves on. But
We know folks at the Neutral Buoyancy Lab down in Houston. That might be a new task to assign them.
I love that.
Yeah. So let's okay. So we've got just a few minutes. Let's showcase your skills here
Okay.
and then talk about why is this a useful tool for you, and then also why would it be useful to astronauts?
To astronauts. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and mix this up, and you guys can see me. I'm mixing it up, and I'm not cheating. I don't know basically. And I like to say my origin story for Rubik's Cubes was 7th grade. I had a math teacher who said, if you want to learn how to solve a Rubik's Cube, I'm going to start now. Come up to my room during lunch, and I will teach you how to solve a Rubik's Cube. And that's what I did. And then it was just like a party trick for many years. It was just like something, if I was feeling like I was the dumbest engineer in the room, well, I could pull out a Rubik's Cube and I could solve it. So at least I could do that. And then after that, I was trying to figure out how to get on a zero gravity flight. That was my goal because I want to go to space. Let's go on a zero gravity flight and figure it out. And that's when I reached out to Rubik's and said, hey guys, if I do this, would you guys be interested in like spotting me some cash to do it? And they said yes, and they paid for the whole thing. And I got to fly in zero G, where I solved a Rubik's Cube in 19 seconds. So yeah, it's like a weird talent. It works out well. It started in 7th grade. I wasn't planning on it being part of my career, but sometimes you just tie in those little things, and it worked out. Like, yeah, it was a great experience. And now I can solve Rubik's Cubes. It's like a thing. Like.
And how was it trying to do it on the zero gravity lab? Zero G flights. Easy and harder? Did it make much of a difference?
I think the hardest part, it wasn't the actual solving of the cube. Like that's all like in this little square and I can do that. But it was like the fact that I was like floating around and like someone like kicked me in the face and like I hit my head on like the ceiling, which is not something you usually have to worry about when you're sitting here solving a Rubik's Cube. So it's the fact that I was in this like zero G environment, which as you were saying, why does this matter? That's a really good, can I stay focused on the task at hand when all the things around me are completely different than what I'm used to? And that's something that astronauts deal with all the time. Like they're fixing something and the screws off and the wrench. And so learning how to be aware of everything around you while being able to focus on this one thing. It's an astronaut skill, guys. I'm telling you. Like,
I'm telling you, I'm with you on that. Dr. Morrison in the chat is saying that Colorado School of Mines also has a remote option with students all around
yep.
the U.S. That's really cool. Bailey,
That's what I did.
You did part of that. Yeah, you were part of the remote
for
program.
Tucson.
Yeah.
And it's also international, just as a heads up. Like people from Japan and like all over, like it's an international program if you do it remotely. And I think that's one of the benefits as well, is you get all these different perspectives.
Yeah. How many students are in the program at a given time? This is now the third cohort?
Yeah, I actually not sure where they're at now. I know they're growing. I would say when I graduated, like my class had 6 people in it, like who graduated. And then like overall, there's probably maybe 30 to 40 people maybe in the program. I think it's expanding. It's probably getting close to 80 or higher maybe, but it's definitely growing. So jump in now if you're interested. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, well, we're at an hour. Thank you so much, Bailey. As Terry just wrote, freaking rock star. That's what you just wrote. So nice. Appreciate that. All right. Well, thanks a lot. We'll chat again soon. When you come up to Seattle to go talk to the headquarters at Blue, stop by, let me know, and we'll go grab a beer or something. Right on.
I'll be back later this year, so you guys can't be part of that conversation. Sorry, but we're gonna have another space conversation. It's gonna be awesome.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thanks a lot.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.